Good evening, dear listener. Welcome back to another calm and wandering story, a journey through time, sound, and meaning. If you have not yet done so, take a moment to subscribe to the channel and gently write a comment below. Perhaps your thoughts about rain or your favorite sound after a storm. These little gestures help this quiet corner of the world continue to exist, like a small lamp kept burning in a temple at night. Now, let the world around you grow softer. Let the sounds of your room fade behind the hum of frogs and the distant rustle of water. Tonight, we travel to the humid plains and sacred rivers of India, to a time when frogs were not simply small creatures that leapt among reeds, but bearers of prayers, omens of renewal, and voices of the earth calling for rain. Imagine a flat, wide land stretching endlessly, the soil cracked, pale, waiting. The air is warm but heavy with silence. The people lift their eyes every morning toward the white sky, searching for clouds that never come. And then, one evening, from somewhere unseen, a sound, a single croak, deep and round, echoing across the fields. The first frog is spoken. In India, this sound marks the turning of the season, the moment when life begins to stir again after the long, dusty heat. It is not only a natural event, but a sacred one. Ancient poets compared the frog's song to the chanting of Brahmins calling the heavens. The Rig Veda, one of the oldest known scriptures in the world, even dedicates an entire hymn to the frogs, the Manduka Sukta, or Hymn of the Frogs. It describes them as learned students, gathering to recite the wisdom of rain, their voices like prayers that call the sky to release its bounty. For the ancient listener, the frog's croak was more than noise. It was the cosmic reply of earth to heaven, a conversation between realms. And in that conversation lies the story of Manduka. In Sanskrit, Manduka means frog, but it is also the name of sages, metaphors, and even a form of yoga, Mandukasana, the frog posture, designed to open the body in humility toward the ground, just as frogs press themselves low before the rain. In the language of myth, Manduka was not only an animal, but a teacher. He appears in the Mahabharata and in various Puranic tales, not always as a hero, but as a mirror, a being who listens, adapts, and transforms. The frog embodies the rhythm of dual worlds, land and water, silence and sound, life and sleep. He lives between, never belonging entirely to one or the other. And this in-between state is deeply spiritual in Hindu thought. The sages said, "As the frog rests in both water and land, so the soul rests in both body and eternity." And so, to understand Manduka, one must listen not to his leap, but to his stillness before it. One of the most gentle and mysterious tales of transformation in Hindu lore is the story of Beki, sometimes considered a manifestation of Manduka, a frog woman who loved the sun. Long ago, it is said, a prince once walked near a lake at dawn. The mist hovered low, and dew clung to the blades of grass. There, beside the water, he saw a golden frog shimmering in the first light. When he approached, the frog spoke in a soft, human voice, asking if he would take her as his bride. The prince, startled but curious, agreed. And in that moment, the frog transformed into a beautiful woman, luminous but strange, with eyes that seemed to reflect both sunlight and rain clouds. Her name was Beki. They lived happily for a time, but Beki made her husband promise one thing. He must never show her to the light of the sun. For many months, she stayed indoors, and each evening she sang to him, soft, liquid songs that made the walls shimmer with moisture. but one day he forgot. As dawn came, he lifted the curtain, and a single ray of sunlight fell upon her skin. Becky sighed. In that breath, she began to fade, her form growing transparent, as though the light itself were calling her back. The prince tried to hold her, but she whispered, "You have brought me back to the realm I came from." The frog cannot live long in the fire of the sun, and with that, she vanished into the lake. In this quiet legend lies a profound idea: the eternal cycle between water and fire, between rain and sunlight. The frog, born of the water, carries within it the power to summon clouds, but the sun, giver of light, also draws that water away. Their relationship is one of creation and loss, balance and transformation. Philosophically, Becky represents the transient nature of desire. That which thrives in one element cannot endure in another. She is also the union of the earthly and the celestial, a bridge between the tangible and the mystical. In some regions, people still whisper her name during the first rains, a small echo of gratitude for renewal. And in the monsoon festivals of rural India, girls used to craft small clay frogs, painting them with bright green and gold, offering them to the rain gods and singing the ancient lines. Let the frogs sing, let the clouds hear, let life return to the fields across the vast Indian subcontinent. The monsoon is not just a season, it is a heartbeat. For millennia, every sound, smell, and rhythm of life was tied to the rain's arrival. The frog's voice, therefore, was the first note of a symphony, the prelude to abundance. In many rural traditions, frogs are married to each other in small symbolic ceremonies known as Manduka vivaha. During times of drought, villagers perform this frog wedding to please the rain gods. 2 frogs are bathed, decorated with flowers, and carried through the village to the nearest pond. Prayers are recited, drums are softly beaten, and songs are sung to invite the clouds to bless the union. It may seem whimsical, even humorous, but for those who live by the rhythm of crops and clouds, such rituals carry deep meaning. The frog song is not only an animal sound, it is the voice of the earth calling for rain. In this, the humble frog becomes both symbol and participant in divine balance. In the Rig Veda, the hymn of the frogs likens their chorus to the voices of Brahmins chanting the sacred mantras at dawn. Each frog croaking after the first rain is compared to a pupil repeating after the teacher, echoing divine knowledge into the moist air. Here, the symbolism unfolds gently. The frog's noise, which might seem chaotic, is revealed to be a form of cosmic harmony. Just as rain nourishes the earth, sound nourishes consciousness. And the frogs, sitting quietly on the edges of flooded fields, are seen as guardians of this harmony. In Vedic thought, all sound carries power. The word shabda is sacred. It creates, sustains, and transforms. When the frogs call, they are reawakening the sound within the universe, the song of life returning. Every frog's life is a quiet parable. It begins as a tadpole, a creature of water, soft, fragile, unformed. Then, through the alchemy of time, it gains limbs, breath, and freedom. It becomes an amphibian, an embodied lesson in transformation. For Hindu philosophy, this mirrors the journey of the soul, the shift from ignorance to awakening, from one state of being to another. To live like a frog is to accept change not as a threat, but as a rhythm. To trust in the cycle of becoming. When the rains end and the pools dry up, the frogs retreat into the soil. They sleep through the dry months, silent, invisible, a reminder that silence, too, is sacred. Just as in meditation, the mind withdraws to prepare for the next awakening. Thus, in every croak, in every stillness, Manduka speaks of rebirth. So as you rest tonight, imagine yourself by a quiet pond, the air thick with the scent of wet earth. Lotus leaves floating gently on the surface, a few ripples widening, then stilling again. And in the distance, the faint, deep voices of frogs rising like prayers. Each sound tells you something ancient, that life returns, that what has vanished will rise again, that even the smallest creatures can carry the weight of the divine. The story of Manduka is not yet over. In the chapters ahead, we will travel deeper through the Vedic hymns, through tantric symbols, and into the hidden landscapes of the monsoon mind, where the frog becomes a philosopher, a companion of sages, and even a messenger between gods. But for now, rest gently, as the frogs do when the rain stops. The earth breathes, the water hums, and all things are preparing, quietly, to begin again. The story of Manduka is not limited to the ponds or the monsoon songs. It lives deeper in the pages of philosophy, in the whispers of sages who saw in the frog not merely an animal, but a reflection of consciousness itself. In the still waters where frogs dwell, the ancient thinkers saw the stillness of the mind, and in the ripple that followed their leap, they saw the vibration of creation, the first movement of thought within the infinite. This chapter is a journey through that stillness, through the sacred silence of the Mandukya Upanishad, one of the briefest yet most profound of all Hindu scriptures. A text that, like the frog's life, contains the cycle of awakening in its simplest form. It begins with a name, Mandukya, from Manduka, the frog. And though scholars have long debated why this Upanishad bears such a name, tradition offers quiet clues. The frog, in its resting form, is small, compact, still, yet capable of sudden, graceful movement. It lives between two worlds, water and land. The Upanishad, too, speaks of two worlds, the seen and the unseen, the waking and the dreaming, and of the leap that joins them. In this way, the frog becomes a metaphor for consciousness itself, resting, waiting, poised between states of being. In Vedic symbolism, when the frog leaps from the water, it pierces the surface between reflection and reality. It rises from the depths, dripping into the light. So too does the human soul, Atman, rise from the waters of ignorance toward the sunlight of awareness. The Mandukya Upanishad teaches this leap not through movement, but through sound. At the heart of the Mandukya Upanishad lies a single syllable, Om, or Aum. Just as the frog's croak is the sign that rain has come, Om is the vibration that signals the birth of the universe. This syllable, the text tells us, contains all that is, was, and will be. It is made of 3 letters, A, U, M. Each sound is a world, a state of being. A is the waking world, Jagrat, clear, external like daylight. U is the dream world, Svapna, the inner realm, rich and fluid like twilight. M is deep sleep, Sushupti, the still, unshaken darkness before dawn. And beyond these 3, there is a 4th. It is called Turiya, the silent awareness that holds all 3 together. It is the pond itself, not the ripples. It is the pause after the croak, the silence between the rains. When chanted slowly, Aum begins with a breath, swells like a ripple, and returns to stillness. It mirrors the cycle of the frog's life, of seasons, and of the human soul. Birth, movement, rest. Imagine the human mind as a pond, clear, but not empty. On its surface, the reflections of trees and clouds shimmer and change. These are the thoughts of the waking world. bright, restless, impermanent. When we dream, it is as though the pond begins to tremble. The reflections dissolve, replaced by forms born from within, and in deep sleep the surface becomes utterly still. No ripples, no images. Yet beneath that stillness, life persists. The Manduka Upanishad invites us to look beneath that surface, to dive into the pond and listen. What we hear there, it says, is Aum, the soundless vibration that sustains all life. And when we recognize that sound, we awaken, not into another dream, but into awareness itself. This awakening is called realization of Brahman, the understanding that the self and the universe are not two. They are one, as the frog and the rain are one in the monsoon cycle. In ancient tradition, the frog was believed to embody prana, the breath of life. It croaks after the rain, because the air and water have reunited. It breathes through both skin and lung, above and below water, a being always aware of two realms at once. Some yogic texts even mention Manduka Rishi, the frog sage, who meditated by the edge of a lotus pond and taught the secret of listening to one's own inner sound. He taught that the ear, not the eye, is the path to enlightenment. The eye sees difference, but the ear receives unity. He said, "In the sound of the frog, I hear the pulse of the world. In its silence, I hear the space between worlds. To meditate like a frog," he taught, "is to sit unmoving but alert, body grounded, mind buoyant, waiting for the breath to rise and fall as naturally as rain returning to the sky." In later traditions, this gave rise to Mandukasana, the frog pose in yoga, where the knees open wide like lotus petals, the chest lowered toward the earth, the breath steady. It is an act of surrender, of remembering one's connection to both the ground and the breath of the divine. When the frog leaps, it does not think of distance. It trusts the strength of its body, the timing of its moment. So too the spiritual leap, the pratyahara, the withdrawal from sensory distraction, requires no striving, only readiness. In Mandukiya philosophy, the leap is inward. It is the transition from sound to silence, from form to formlessness. The Upanishad says that just as a frog's leap disturbs the water but leaves no lasting trace, so too does consciousness pass through waking, dreaming, and sleep, leaving no scar upon eternity. Each jump, each sound, each thought is a ripple on the eternal pond. To meditate upon Aum is to watch those ripples until they disappear. And when they vanish, what remains is the unbroken surface of awareness. In the poetic imagination of India, everything follows rhythm: the stars, the rivers, the breath. And so too the Mandukiya's 4 states are often compared to the seasons of the monsoon. The waking state is like summer, bright, expansive, outward. The dreaming state is like the early monsoon, rich, unpredictable, fragrant. The deep sleep is like the dry months, silent, conserving energy beneath the surface. The 4th state, Turiya, is like the balance point, the moment when earth and sky are in perfect accord. In this metaphor, the frog is both the watcher and the participant. It sings to call the clouds, it sleeps beneath the soil, it emerges reborn each season. Thus, it mirrors the journey of the soul through birth, death, and awakening. When one repeats Aum slowly, one notices something subtle. The sound fades, but the awareness of sound remains. That lingering awareness, the moment when the voice has stopped but the mind still vibrates, is called Turiya. It is the pure consciousness beyond experience. In the quiet monastic halls of India, monks used to sit for hours by ponds or wells, reciting Aum into the water. They would watch the ripples spread and fade, listening for the silence that followed. They said the water held the echo longer than air, a mirror for the subtle resonance within the body. To reach this silence is to reach the heart of the Manduka mystery. To understand that every sound, every leap, every movement is born of stillness and returns to it. Centuries later, philosophers like Gaudapada, a master of Advaita Vedanta, wrote a commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad. He compared the cycles of consciousness to the illusion of waves on an unmoving ocean. What we call waking and dreaming, he said, are only appearances. The reality beneath them never changes. Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika became a cornerstone of non-dual philosophy. In it, the frog, small, quiet, patient, becomes a symbol of supreme wisdom. Not because it knows everything, but because it embodies simplicity, acceptance, and rhythm. He wrote, "The self does not move, though the worlds arise and vanish. It is as still as a frog in meditation. In every monsoon, there is a moment when the first drops fall upon the parched soil. The sound is unmistakable, a kind of applause from the heavens. And soon after, the frogs begin their chorus. Each note, each call becomes part of the sacred exchange between sky and earth. To the listener attuned to this rhythm, the frog's voice becomes like Aum, not separate from meditation, but its natural counterpart. The rain awakens not only the land, but also memory. The memory that the world is alive. The consciousness pervades every corner of existence. Just as Aum reawakens awareness in the mind, the rain reawakens life in the soil. The sages call this the cosmic dialogue. Prithvi, earth, speaking to Parjanya, rain, and Manduka, the frog, being the bridge of sound between them. In some folk retellings, the frog's call is said to challenge the sun, to remind the fiery orb that the earth belongs not only to heat, but to water, shade, and patience. The frog endures both, bathing in rain, resting under sunlight, but never claiming dominion over either. This dual endurance made it a symbol of balance, much like the yogi who endures both pleasure and pain with equanimity. To the seeker, Manduka teaches that the heat of the world, its ambitions, its desires, must always be cooled by the waters of awareness. When one listens deeply, the frog's croak is not crude or harsh. It is the earth's mantra, a voice that knows both suffering and relief. When one sits in meditation and listens, not to the world outside, but to the subtle vibration within, one hears something faint, continuous, and ancient. Some call it the inner Omkar, others the Anahata Nada, the unstruck sound. It is said to arise from the heart or from the space between breaths, and it sounds, so the texts say, like a frog echoing across still water. This is why in some tantric practices, the frog becomes a guide, a small, overlooked being whose sound points toward the eternal. The Mandukya's lesson is simple. The infinite does not shout. It hums softly, waiting to be heard by those who have stilled the mind. And so, in this quiet philosophy, the frog becomes the teacher. Its voice, its silence, its patience, all reveal something profound about the human condition. It is the sound before thought, the leap before form, the bridge between sleep and wakefulness. As you lie down tonight, imagine a single frog resting on a lotus leaf. The pond is still, the moonlight silver, the air dense with the scent of wet earth. Each breath you take forms a ripple, each ripple a sound. And somewhere within that rhythm, the syllable Aum hums softly, the universe remembering itself. In the next chapter, we will follow Manduka into the rituals and myths of rainmaking, where villagers, priests, and poets all invoke the frog not as a creature to be pitied, but as a companion of gods, a singer whose song can bring the sky to tears. Before the rains come, the land waits like a sleeping god. The soil cracks open in long, silent sighs. The rivers thin to threads of silver, and even the trees seem to whisper to the clouds that will not answer. And then, the frogs begin to sing. In that sound, that trembling rhythmic chorus, there is something more than instinct. It is memory, an ancient echo that has guided countless generations toward the season of life. Across India, from Bengal's rice paddies to the red clay of Madhya Pradesh, people once believed that frogs could speak to the gods of rain, and that through them, the human world could be heard by the sky. Tonight, let us listen to those voices, carried through centuries of faith, ritual, and song. In many rural villages, especially in Assam, Bihar, and Karnataka, when the monsoon delays and the wells begin to dry, the people perform a gentle and joyful ritual known as Manduka Vivaha, the wedding of the frogs. At dawn, villagers search the fields and gather 2 frogs, one male, one female. They are washed with sacred water, just as a bride and groom would be before a human wedding. A red thread is tied around their tiny limbs. Their bodies are adorned with turmeric, vermilion, and small garlands of marigold. Children laugh softly, mimicking the voices of priests, while the elders chant verses from the Vedas, words meant for rain, now offered to these humble creatures. The frogs are placed side by side upon a small leaf or wooden tray, and together they are carried in a procession through the village. The air fills with song. Women sing of clouds returning. Men beat soft drums that echo like thunder in the distance. The ceremony ends near a pond or well, where the frogs are gently released to leap back into the water, their union complete. Soon after, it is said, the rain begins. It does not matter whether one believes it to be coincidence or faith. The joy of the ritual itself becomes a prayer strong enough to move the heart of heaven. Throughout India, there are old rain songs known as Barsat Geet, sung when the skies remain stubbornly clear. Many of these songs mention frogs, sometimes teasingly, sometimes with reverence. In one from Rajasthan, the women sing, "O frog, sing louder, let Indra hear your cry. You croak, we clap, and the clouds will reply." In the fields of Bengal, children form small circles, clapping in rhythm, and call to the frogs in playful tones. "Manduk, Manduk, the sky is thirsty. Tell your mother to bring the rain." In these verses, the frog becomes both messenger and mediator, a familiar neighbor who understands both the earth's thirst and the sky's generosity. What is beautiful here is not just the belief that frogs can summon rain, but that humans join them in the act, echoing their rhythm, imitating their voices, blending nature and culture into a single chant. In the Vedic imagination, rain is divine communication, the compassion of the gods falling from the sky. The rain god, Indra, and the fertility deity, Parjanya, were both seen as powerful, but also responsive. They could be called, persuaded, sung to, and the frog was their herald. According to certain hymns, the frog's croak was the announcement of Indra's chariot rolling through the heavens. When the first thunder rumbled, people said it was the sky answering the frogs. The Rig Veda says, "When the frogs spoke after the year-long silence, their voices rose like the priests chanting at the sacrifice." The rains followed. It is a subtle vision of the world, where every sound, even the smallest, has cosmic significance. The frogs were not separate from the ritual of rain. They were the ritual itself. To call the gods, one needed not wealth, nor fire, nor temple. Only a voice that echoed the earth's need. And the frog had that voice. When the first showers arrive, the celebrations begin. Not just for farmers, but for all of life. In Kerala, the festival of Varsha Pirapu marks the birth of the monsoon season. In Tamil Nadu, women decorate the courtyards with wet clay designs, called kolam, and sing to the frogs hidden in the puddles. In Odisha, a festival called Raja Parba celebrates the fertility of the earth itself, a time when the soil rests like a bride before the rains, and frogs are seen as heralds of her renewal. Children fashion small clay frogs and float them down streams in leaf boats, symbolizing the union of water and land. In the Northeast, some tribes hold ceremonies where elders mimic frog calls, beating bamboo tubes filled with water to create the sound of distant thunder. The air grows heavy with rhythm, a chorus of humans and frogs, indistinguishable. This harmony of laughter, faith, and nature has survived for centuries, even when the reasons were forgotten. It reminds us that ancient India saw no boundary between ritual and ecology. Every creature was part of the sacred chain of renewal. In villages where calendars were rare and clocks unknown, the sound of frogs was a natural measure of time. Their songs began when humidity rose, when lightning flickered far to the east, a signal that the monsoon had awakened. Elders listened to the rhythm of the croaks to guess whether the rains would be light or heavy. A slow, spaced rhythm meant gentle rains. A dense, overlapping chorus meant torrents and floods. They called it the Manduka alap, the frog's raga. Some villages even told time at night by the pattern of frog calls, noting that certain species sang only at twilight, others deep after midnight. Thus, the frog became a clock of nature, a living barometer that bound the rhythm of the world to the rhythm of sound. To live in such harmony, to measure time by croak and rain, is to be part of a world that still listens. After the rains arrive, the frogs fall silent again. The ponds overflow, the rivers swell, the air cools. And so the people give thanks, not only to Indra, not only to Parjanya, but to the frogs who called them. In the evenings, small oil lamps are placed along the pond's edge, flickering in the damp breeze. Children float lotus leaves with candles on them, and the soft glow drifts across the water. In those reflections, light upon rippling water, one sees the shape of the universe itself, movement held within stillness. The villagers whisper short prayers. May your voices rest until the next thirst of the earth. This gratitude, simple and quiet, keeps the cycle of respect alive, not as superstition, but as memory. The frog's role is not forgotten once the rain falls. It is honored just as one would honor a sage who has completed his teaching. In some interpretations of Hindu cosmology, the world is sustained by sound, by the vibration of Nada Brahma, the sound of being. The frog's croak, though rough and uneven, is considered a fragment of this cosmic song. Old temple carvings in South India even depict frogs near the feet of musicians or rain gods. In the great temple of Hampi, if you clap your hands near the stone pavilion, the echoes sound like a frog's call, a deliberate acoustic design meant to invite the rain. The ancients saw music, rain, and frogs as part of the same cycle, all arising from vibration, all dissolving back into silence. When the first monsoon rains strike temple roofs, The resonance is said to awaken the sleeping deities within. The frogs outside and the bells inside sing together. One natural, one crafted, but both divine. In modern times, when rain is measured in millimeters and seasons are forecast by satellites, it may be difficult to imagine how deep this reverence once ran. Yet, behind the poetry and ritual lies a keen ecological truth. Frogs are keepers of balance. They thrive only where water is pure, where soil is alive. Their presence signals health. Their absence warns of decline. To the ancients, the silence of frogs was as alarming as the silence of prayers. Thus, the rituals were not only spiritual, but environmental. Ways of noticing, remembering, and protecting. By linking frogs to gods, the people linked nature to morality, ecology to ethics. When the villagers sang to the frogs, they were, unknowingly, singing to themselves, acknowledging the delicate web that bound all living things. The frog lives in thresholds, between water and land, silence and sound, visible and invisible worlds. Every leap it makes is a crossing. In this way, it mirrors the relationship between humanity and divinity, separate yet connected, different yet dependent. In the Atharva Vedi, there is a line that says, "The frog is the son of the rain, but the father of rivers." This paradox reveals its sacred role. Born from the rain, but giving birth to new life. To the listener of the past, it meant that divinity is not linear, but circular. The giver and receiver become one. And so, when villagers sang to the frogs, they were not pleading for charity from the heavens. They were participating in the cosmic exchange of giving and returning. Imagine a night deep in monsoon season. The fields are flooded. The air is thick with the smell of mud and jasmine. Lanterns flicker under thatched roofs, and beyond them, a chorus of frogs rises. Rhythmic, layered, endless. It is not noise. It is a hymn. Each voice answers another. Each pause makes space for the next. The sound fills the valleys and the rivers alike, and those who listen closely can feel it within their chest, a heartbeat shared by all things. In such a night, one might understand what the old sages meant, that to listen to the frog's song is to hear the world breathing. When the rain has fallen long enough and the rivers have risen, the frogs grow quiet again. The ponds are full, the air cool, the harvest near. The croaking stops, replaced by the hum of crickets and the rustle of reeds. To some, this silence is peaceful, to others, melancholic. But the wise say it is simply the pause before the next cycle. In Hindu cosmology, creation is followed by dissolution, day by night, sound by silence. The frog teaches this too, to know when to sing and when to be still. The world does not need constant praise. Sometimes it needs quiet gratitude. To the poets and philosophers of old, Beki's vanishing was not tragedy, but revelation. She was not punished nor lost. She had merely returned to her element. Fire and water cannot dwell together long, and yet the world exists because they do meet, however briefly. Every sunrise upon a pond, every droplet that evaporates into sky, is a reminder of this eternal embrace. In Beki, the ancients saw a truth about life itself, that longing and fulfillment are bound by the same thread. Desire seeks union with its opposite, knowing that union will dissolve it. The frog, who belongs to both water and land, lives this truth quietly every day. A creature that endures the sun's warmth but never forgets the cool refuge below. Each year, when the first monsoon rains arrive and the frogs begin to sing, villagers in Bengal and Assam say, "Baki has risen again." they do not mean her spirit has returned in form, but in rhythm, the rhythm of renewal. Her story, they say, is the story of every droplet that falls, every river that returns to the sea, every heart that learns to love again after loss. She is not one being, but a pattern, the moment when the sun meets the lake and creation begins anew. The philosophers called this samsara, the wheel of transformation, where no ending is final and no separation absolute. Beki's leap into the pond is not a disappearance, but a return, a dissolving back into the source of being, just as the sound of Aum fades into silence. So does her form dissolve into water, not gone, but spread everywhere. To understand the deeper meaning, one must remember, in the language of symbols, the frog represents water, fertility, renewal, while the sun represents fire, energy, consciousness. Their encounter mirrors the meeting of two principles, the feminine and the masculine, the receptive and the radiating. When the sun's light falls upon the water, it awakens life, but also consumes it. The lotus blooms, but the dew disappears. The frog sings, but hides from the glare. In this gentle contradiction lies the heart of Hindu cosmology. That creation requires tension between opposites. Beki's story teaches balance, to know when to shine and when to submerge, when to seek warmth and when to return to coolness. It is the rhythm of all existence, expansion and withdrawal, day and night, life and rest. Over the centuries, the story of Beki traveled beyond Hinduism, carried by traders, monks, and storytellers. In some Buddhist retellings, she becomes a symbol of Maya, illusion, the shimmer of form that hides the formless truth beneath. In folk versions from Nepal and Bengal, she reappears as a river goddess who marries a mortal, bringing wealth and crops until he forgets her sacred origin. But even when her name changes, Bhakti, Bhogika, Beki, or Behi, the essence remains. The union of mortal and divine, of light and water, and the reminder that love between unlike beings is both beautiful and fleeting. Every culture that inherited her tale kept the same soft ending, the return to the water, the fading into reflection. When the prince looked into the pond after she vanished, he saw only the reflection of the sun. But slowly, as the light shifted, he began to see something else, the faint outline of her face beneath the ripples, the suggestion of her smile in the trembling water. He realized then that she had not left. She had become the reflection itself, the image between worlds. In Indian thought, the reflection is not illusion, but revelation. It shows what cannot be seen directly. Just as one cannot stare into the sun, but can see its light in the pond, so too one cannot perceive the divine, but can glimpse it in the world's reflection. Thus, Beki's descent became a metaphor for hidden truth, the divine that lives beneath the surface of what seems ordinary. When frogs call after rain, people say, "She is speaking again through them." Each croak is a small echo of her song to the sun. In the language of Vedanta, everything born of duality must eventually dissolve into unity. Fire and water, lover and beloved, sound and silence, all are threads woven into the same tapestry. To resist this dissolution is to suffer. To accept it is to awaken. Beki's disappearance, then, is not loss, but liberation. She returns to her element without resistance, like a drop returning to the ocean. And in doing so, she fulfills her nature, as all beings eventually must. This lesson, gentle yet profound, was cherished by sages who saw in her story the quiet courage of surrender, the understanding that endings are not the opposite of beginnings, but their continuation. And yet, even the sun, it is said, mourned her. For days after her return, he softened his heat, casting a golden haze upon the lakes as though searching for her beneath the surface. The people called this Baki's light, that gentle, misted sunlight after rain when everything glows with tender brightness. In this light, frogs gather again, and their voices rise, a chorus of love songs, of longing transformed into prayer. It is as if the sun, remembering his lost bride, answers their call with warmth, but not with fire, a reminder that even power learns gentleness through loss. Somewhere in the lowlands of India, where rivers turn as sluggish in the dry season and the sky stays pale with dust, a sound rises from the ponds, hesitant, then growing. The frogs have begun to call again. To the untrained ear, it is noise. To the old listener, it is the beginning of a ritual. In ancient times, people said the frogs were priests of the monsoon, that their songs contained the same vibration as sacred mantras. Their throats, swelling and releasing, mirrored the pulsing breath of the world itself. And so, long before the first drop of rain fell, villagers gathered to echo them, to become part of the same living rhythm that connected heaven and earth. Imagine a quiet village before the monsoon. The air is tense, filled with waiting. The ponds are half empty, the cattle restless. At dusk, a group of villagers walk toward the water's edge, carrying small lamps, clay drums, and conch shells. Children trail behind, laughing softly. At the pond, they stop and listen. One by one, the frogs begin their low, rhythmic croaking. The villagers smile. This is their cue. They begin to sing in response, chanting verses older than anyone remembers. Rise, Manduka, rise, call to the clouds. Awaken Indra's heart, let the earth breathe again. The drums answer the frogs. The frogs answer the drums. Sound and echo blend, until no one can tell which is human and which is natural. The ritual is not about dominance. It is about participation. The people are not commanding the rain. They are joining its prelude. To understand why frogs became symbols of invocation, one must return to the Vedic philosophy of sound, where every vibration is a form of consciousness. The world, say the Upanishads, began not with sight, but with sound. And from that sound, Aum, all forms emerged. When the frogs call, they recreate that first vibration, a pulse that moves through the body of the earth and awakens dormant life. It is said that the gods recognize this pulse. It reminds them of the beginning. The frogs, therefore, are not simply calling rain. They are reawakening the cosmic sound, the Nada Brahma, that holds all things together. In temples and rain-invoking ceremonies, 3 sounds are considered most sacred: the bell, the conch, and the voice. Each represents an element of creation. The bell's ring is the spark of light. The conch's call is the breath of wind. And the voice, vibrating through flesh and air, is the pulse of water. When the priests ring the bell at dawn, the note is meant to clear the air of inertia, to remind both gods and mortals that day has begun. Its tone travels across courtyards, into forests, over ponds, and the frogs, sensitive to vibration, often answer. This exchange of sound was seen as a conversation between worlds, temple and pond, man and a creature, prayer and echo. Even now, in villages near Ujjain or Banaras, one can stand at twilight and hear the overlap of bells and frogs, a polyphony of devotion, timeless and uncomposed. Among the rituals of rainmaking, few are as mysterious as the Manduka yajna, the frog sacrifice, though the word sacrifice here means offering, not harm. Described in fragments of the Brahmanas and Puranas, it was performed to awaken the clouds after long droughts. a priest would sit by a pond and recite mantras to Indra, the god of rain, while holding a vessel of water. Around him, villagers would chant softly, clapping in rhythm with the frogs. Sometimes, small clay figures of frogs were molded and placed near the altar, symbols of fertility and sound. The ritual followed a pattern: silence, sound, silence. The same rhythm as the rain cycle itself. First, the quiet of drought, then the noise of storm, finally, the hush of renewal. When the priest poured the water into the fire as an offering, he whispered, "May the sound of the frog reach the heavens." It was not magic. It was recognition. That sound is a bridge, not a command. To the ancient mind, rain was not just water. It was liquid life, distilled from the union of heaven and earth. And sound was the alchemist that united them. Every croak, every mantra, every bell tone was believed to shape the unseen currents above. In the Atharva Veda, one finds verses comparing rainfall to speech itself. The clouds are mouths, thunder their syllables, lightning their breath. To chant is to imitate this process. To call is to harmonize with it. Thus, the frog became not merely a rainbringer, but a symbol of the transformation of sound into matter, vibration into water, thought into nourishment. Even today, when rain arrives after long silence, one can feel this alchemy: the sudden coolness, the scent of soil rising, the sound of frogs merging with thunder. It is as if the universe is breathing again, in tune with its own voice. One of the forgotten teachings of old India is that the earth listens. It responds not to noise, but to intention carried by sound. To speak gently, to sing with gratitude, was believed to heal. To shout, to curse, to strike the air with anger, these were said to disturb the elemental spirits that govern wind and rain. The frogs, by contrast, were thought to speak the purest form of sound. Sound born of need, not pride. They do not sing for display, they sing to live. Their voice is both prayer and instinct, free of deception. So when villagers imitated them, they sought to borrow that purity, to speak as nature speaks, to join the earth in asking rather than demanding. This philosophy of harmonious sound shaped much of Hindu ritual, not only for rain, but for healing, childbirth, harvest, and farewell. In yogic texts, Manduka is not only the frog by the pond, but the ascetic in meditation. He sits still for hours, barely moving, his body grounded, his breath slow. And then, at the right moment, he takes a deep inward leap into silence. This leap, called Antar Yoga, mirrors the frog's physical motion. It is the shift from the outer rhythm of chanting to the inner rhythm of stillness. Both are forms of rain-making. One brings water from clouds, the other brings awareness from the soul. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika even mentions the Manduki Mudra, the frog gesture, where the practitioner curls the tongue and listens to the inner sound, the hum of existence itself. Thus, the frog is not only the voice of nature, but the teacher of inner hearing. Even the modern observer, stripped of myth, can sense the wisdom hidden within. Frogs, after all, respond to humidity and barometric pressure. Their songs are literal indicators of changing weather. Their calls are not mystical messages, but biological forecasts, tuned to subtle atmospheric shifts. But to the ancient people who listened closely, this was not science, but participation in a living world. They heard the same truth, that frogs know the language of rain, and expressed it through reverence rather than measurement. What we now call ecology, they called devotion. What we call data, they called song. And perhaps, in their listening, they were closer to the truth For to measure is one thing, but to feel the rhythm of life is another. There is a deep connection between water and the mind in Indian philosophy. Both are reflective, both shaped by vibration. A disturbed pond cannot mirror the moon. A restless mind cannot reflect truth. When sound enters water, it travels farther, softer, and deeper than in air. Thus, chanting beside a pond was believed to carry prayers to subtler realms, not above, but within. The frog's croak, echoing across the surface, became an image of consciousness rippling through stillness. In meditation, the seeker listens for this same vibration, the inner frog, as some mystics humorously called it. The small, steady voice beneath thought that connects all things. To experience this unity, one needs only to stand in the monsoon. Rain drumming on rooftops, frogs calling, wind humming through trees, thunder murmuring like a giant heartbeat. All merge into a single, unbroken sound. This is the Manduka raga, the music of renewal. In this symphony, there are no listeners and performers, only participants. Every leaf, every drop, every creature is a note. Even the silence between sounds, the pause before thunder, the stillness after rain, is part of the rhythm. For the ancients, to live during the monsoon was to live inside a hymn, to be surrounded by the voice of the divine made audible. After the storm, when the last ripples fade and the frogs quiet, there comes a moment of stillness. The sky clears, the air smells of wet grass and renewal. This is when the ritual ends, though no one announces it. The lamps burn low, the water stills, and people walk home in silence. They have sung not only for rain, but for remembrance. To remember their place in the breathing cycle of earth and sky. To remember that sound, like rain, nourishes only when it arises from stillness. This stillness is the true offering, the final silence after the chant, the soft peace that follows fulfillment. The ancients often said that wisdom does not belong only to men. It lives in stones, in rivers, in the sound of wind through leaves, and sometimes in the humble frog resting upon a wet lotus leaf. For those who could listen, the Manduka was not just a creature of mud and rain. It was a teacher of time. Its rhythm of appearance and disappearance mirrored the truth that all things arise, shine, and fall back into silence. The philosophers of old India, who watched the turning of seasons more closely than the movement of stars, found in the frog an image of life's fragile balance. Between water and air, stillness and motion, existence and return. In the stillness after the rain, a pond seems eternal. Its surface reflects the sky with such calmness that one could believe it will never change. Yet beneath, things stir. Tadpoles wriggling, leaves sinking, roots drinking the light that filters through the water. To the yogi, this pond was like the mind, apparently still yet teeming with movement below. The frog, sitting at its edge, embodies awareness itself. It watches, unmoving, until a sudden impulse draws it into motion, and then it returns to stillness again. Each leap is a thought, each rest a return to meditation. The pond never judges the ripples. It simply reflects them until they fade. So too does consciousness. It reflects every joy, every sorrow, and then lets them sink back into silence. The frog, by its very existence, teaches this patience. A tadpole begins as a being of pure water, soft, boneless, without breath. Then, slowly, legs form, lungs awaken, and the small creature learns to rise toward air. What was once bound to one element now discovers another. This transformation, from swimmer to breather, from hidden to revealed, became a natural parable of rebirth. The sages compared the tadpole to the embryo of the soul, still immersed in ignorance, unaware of the larger world. When wisdom dawns, it is as though limbs grow. One rises to the surface, takes the first breath of understanding, and sees the world from above the water. Yet even then, the frog never forgets its origin. It returns often to the pond, to the element that birthed it. Thus it reminds us, enlightenment is not escape, but balance, a remembering of both realms. The frog's life is short, a few seasons of calling, breeding, resting, then silence. But every rain brings others. Their chorus never truly ends. What dies is form. What continues is rhythm. Hindu philosophy sees this pattern everywhere. The body is like the frog, soft, perishable, ever-changing. The self is like the water, receptive, still, infinite. When the frog disappears beneath the surface, it does not cease to exist. It simply moves to a quieter place. Likewise, when we vanish from one form, we return to another, unseen yet present. The Manduka thus became a symbol of cyclical immortality, a being that teaches us to accept death not as an ending, but as a folding back into life's rhythm. Yogic texts often describe breath as the bridge between body and soul, between what is born and what is eternal. To watch a frog breathe is to witness this bridge in motion. Its body expands slowly, contracts, expands again, effortless, rhythmic, serene. The frog's breathing in meditation became an image for the prana cycle. The inhalation is descent into life. The exhalation is return to silence. The wise said, "To live like a frog is to breathe like the earth, slow, patient, trusting the seasons. And when it leaps, it does so without hesitation. No worry of the distance, no fear of falling. Its faith lies in the rhythm of movement. So too the seeker must leap, from ignorance to knowing, from attachment to freedom, not with force, but with trust." In the monasteries of ancient India, it was said that during the monsoon retreat, when monks ceased wandering and stayed in one place, their meditation halls filled with the sound of frogs. The monks did not silence them. They listened. For in their continuous chanting, unhurried and natural, the monks heard the voice of the earth joining their prayers. The frog was a teacher of patience, a reminder that stillness is not absence of sound, but harmony with all sounds. One monk wrote, "The frog chants without temple or scripture, and when silence comes, he does not regret it." Such creatures became part of the monk's meditation, not distractions, but companions. There is a saying in the Mahabharata, "The frog drinks from the pond, yet never drains it." This simple image contains a deep truth about desire. To live is to drink from the world, its pleasures, its moments of love, its songs and rains, but never so greedily that the pond runs dry. The frog teaches moderation. It asks nothing beyond what the season gives. When the pond shrinks, it sleeps. When it fills, it sings. Human beings, forever unsatisfied, could learn from that acceptance. To rest when life is dry, to sing when it flows, to trust that both are necessary. When the monsoon ends and the ponds recede, the frogs vanish. The fields crack. The wind grows still. For months, there's no sound of life. Yet within the mud, deep and unseen, the frogs sleep, their hearts slowed, their bodies coated in clay. They do not resist the silence. They embrace it. This hidden hibernation became a symbol of inner retreat, the season of meditation within the cycle of existence. Even the sages withdrew during such months, not to escape, but to gather strength for the next renewal. The silence of the frog beneath the soil mirrors the silence of the spirit between incarnations, a pause, not an end. And when the rain returns, both awaken as though no time has passed. Every leap begins with release. The frog does not cling to the leaf it leaves behind. It gathers strength, pushes away, and trusts the air to carry it. This became the perfect metaphor for non-attachment, one of the central teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. The sage said, "Act, but do not cling to the fruit of action." The frog, too, acts. It leaps. But once it lands, it is already still again. It neither celebrates nor mourns the distance crossed. In this small gesture lies the secret of freedom, to move fully and then to let go. In every culture, renewal follows decay. But in India, renewal is not triumph. It is remembrance. When the frogs return after months of silence, people smile quietly, as if greeting old friends. Their song is not new. It is ancient, continuing. The same water that once dried into dust now flows again. The same mud that seemed lifeless now bursts with scent and sound. The frogs remind the people that nothing is truly lost, only waiting for the right sound to awaken it. And so they sing, not to start the cycle, but to join it. In Sanskrit, the word manas, mind, shares roots with mana, meaning to measure, to think, to imagine. But the frog's awareness is of a different kind, not analytical, but direct. It reacts, but without fear. It rests, but without sloth. This balance of attention inspired the image of the frog mind, a mind that is awake but not restless, alert but not anxious. Some teachers compared meditation to sitting like a frog on a stone, aware of every ripple, yet undisturbed by them. You wait, breathe, and when movement comes, you act, gracefully, briefly, and return to stillness. Such was their ideal of enlightenment, not escape, but poised presence. The frog's double life, water and land, silence and sound, fascinated the metaphysicians. They saw in it a symbol of the two truths, the relative and the absolute. In the relative, the frog eats, sings, mates, dies. In the absolute, it is part of the eternal flow, inseparable from the pond, the rain, the sun. To see both at once is wisdom. To mistake one for the other is ignorance. The frog, in its simplicity, lives this paradox without question. It does not analyze. It participates. It reminds us that philosophy is not found only in words, but in existence itself. If you stand in the shade of an old Indian temple just after a storm, you might notice a quiet shimmer of life among the carvings. Between the lotus petals carved in stone, on the steps leading down to the temple tank, tiny frogs leap from shadow to shadow. They have been there since before the first chant was sung. To the unseeing eye, they are small, insignificant. To the ancient worshiper, they were messengers of the divine, silent priests who knew the language of both water and heaven. For centuries, in the hymns of the Vedas and the sculptures of shrines, the frog has held this mysterious place, a bridge between worlds, an intermediary through which the gods could listen. In Hindu cosmology, creation is not a single act, but an ongoing dialogue. Heaven speaks through thunder, the earth replies through rain, and somewhere between them, in the soft ponds and flooded fields, the frog repeats the sacred syllables. Its croak is neither speech nor song, yet it carries the tone of both. When the first raindrops strike the ground and the frogs awaken from their months of silence, the world seems to breathe again. The sages called this moment Parjanya's reply, when the sky and the soil recognize one another once more. And the frog, with its humble voice, becomes the echo of creation itself. In the Rigveda's Manduka Sukta, the frogs are likened to priests chanting Vedic hymns. They speak after a year of silence, their voices rising like those who praise the gods. It is a hymn not about animals, but about renewal, the return of voice after silence, faith after drought, life after stillness. In South India, many temples are built with great tanks or ponds beside them. Pushkarinis, the sacred waters that mirror the sky. During the dry months, they lie quiet, reflecting only dust and sunlight. But when the rains arrive, frogs descend in multitudes, filling the temple grounds with life and sound. Priests performing dawn rituals pause for a moment, listening. They do not chase the frogs away, for in those sounds they hear the gods answering their prayers. The world inside the temple, the mantras, the bells, the drums, merges with the world outside, the rain, the wind, the frogs. The barrier between human and divine softens, just as water softens stone. It was said that when frogs sang near temple walls, Lakshmi, goddess of fortune, had returned, for her presence always followed water, and water followed frogs. Among the gods, Indra, lord of thunder and rain, was often depicted riding his white elephant, wielding his lightning spear. But his arrival was never silent. The first sign of his coming, villagers said, was the voice of Manduka. When the frogs began their low chanting, the clouds would start to gather. They were believed to be calling Indra's name, not pleading, but reminding him of his duty to the earth. In one myth from the Mahabharata, Indra grows proud and forgets his obligation to the living world. The rivers shrink, the fields wither, and no prayers reach him. But the frogs continue to sing. Moved by their persistence, Indra remembers his purpose and opens the heavens once more. And so the sages taught that true devotion does not depend on power, but on constancy, the humble voice that continues even when no one listens. In another cycle of thought, the frog was seen as the envoy of Varuna, god of the cosmic waters, the one who holds the oceans, rivers, and rains in balance. Varuna's realm was said to lie both below and above, the sea and the sky. The frog, dwelling between these two, was his earthly companion. When the monsoon arrived, the people said Varuna's messengers had come. Not in chariots, but on webbed feet. They carried his blessings from the clouds into the ponds, completing the circle of life. And when the rains ended, they disappeared again, returning to their hidden realm beneath the soil, just as Varuna's waters retreat to the depths of the ocean. In this, the frog embodied the divine rhythm of appearance and withdrawal, the pulse by which gods communicate with the world. In some tantric traditions, the frog is not only a voice, but also an ear, a listener of sacred vibrations. The Mandukya Upanishad, which shares its name with the frog, teaches that the highest truth is silence, turiya, the soundless awareness behind all sound. The frog, poised and listening between each croak, embodies this awareness. In temple sculpture, one sometimes finds frogs carved beneath the bells or beside the mouths of deities, placed not as decoration, but as symbols of hearing, reminding worshippers to listen inwardly. They signify that divine communication is not a thunderous proclamation, but a whisper one must learn to perceive. In this way, the frog became the listener of the gods, the one who hears the prayers of earth and carries them upward through sound. Among the many deities associated with sound and wisdom, Saraswati, goddess of speech, art, and knowledge, holds special connection to the frog. Her sacred river, too, was said to flow beneath the ground, invisible yet alive, just as frogs live unseen for months beneath the soil. When rains come and the frogs emerge, it is as though Saraswati herself is rising to speak again. In certain folk traditions, women would offer lotus petals and small lamps to the ponds at the start of the rainy season, reciting, "O Saraswati, awaken with your children. Let their voices be your song." Thus, every croak became a verse of her hymn, rough but holy, natural yet divine. The lesson is simple. Wisdom does not always sound beautiful, but it still carries truth. Even the coarse voice of a frog, when born from sincerity, is part of the cosmic orchestra. The Atharvaveda tells us that all things capable of invoking the divine must first know how to imitate it. The frogs, by echoing thunder and rain, became part of that imitation, an earthly mirror of heavenly sound. In return, the gods answered with rain. The people said it was not just the clouds that brought water, but the relationship between heaven and earth that made it fall. Prayer was not begging. It was participation. The frog thus stood as a symbol of reciprocity, of the living dialogue that sustains creation. The sky gives rain, the earth responds with growth, the frog sings gratitude, and the cycle renews itself. When that harmony breaks, through greed, neglect, or noise, the rains delay. So the ancients taught their children to listen to frogs. When they sing, the world is still balanced. When they fall silent, something has gone wrong. If you walk through ancient temples, Khajuraho, Hampi, Chidambaram, and look closely at the carvings near the lower tiers, you may find frogs beside elephants, serpents, and lotus flowers. Their placement is deliberate. They dwell at the base of the cosmic structure, symbolizing the foundation of fertility and renewal. In temple tanks, frog-shaped spouts pour water continuously, signifying the endless cycle of life. Some shrines even have small niches called Manduka Koshtha, the frog's chamber, where water gathers during rain. Priests sprinkle this water on devotees as a blessing, calling it the laughter of Manduka. Thus, the frog lives not only in myth, but in architecture, carved into the very stone of devotion. The frog's presence in temples is not accidental. It reveals an understanding that nature itself is sacred. The ancients never separated the spiritual from the ecological. If the frogs vanished, it was not only a loss of sound, it was a sign of imbalance in the cosmic order. In that sense, the frog became both oracle and warning, a measure of harmony between the human world and the divine world reflected through nature. Even today, when monsoon arrives and city drains overflow, children point to the frogs emerging from hidden corners and say, "The gods are near." Though the old hymns may have faded, their echoes linger in these small gestures of recognition. Seeing the sun was not the end of this connection. For in many regions, frogs are still considered children of the sun, creatures that rise from its heat and return to it through evaporation. The sunlight draws water into the clouds. The frogs, born of the rain, return to sing its praises as the cycle repeats itself. Thus, the sun and the frog are partners, one in the fire, one in the water, supporting each other in silence and song. This subtle connection is manifested in temple rituals, where priests sing solar hymns by the ponds, recognizing that even the smallest voice contributes to the vast cosmic balance between the fire above and the water below. Ultimately, all creation in Hindu thought is sound. Shabda Brahman, the word that becomes the world. And every creature that vibrates, hums, croaks, or sings participates in this divine articulation. The sound of the frog, rough, repetitive, imperfect, is still part of the sacred language. It is not polished like a flute, nor steady like a drum, but it is alive and therefore holy. This belief teaches profound humility. The divine listens to sincerity, not beauty. A prayer whispered by a frog in a murky pond is no less audible than a mantra uttered by a priest beneath gilded towers. After all, the universe is an orchestra, where every note has its place. Every creature and flower in the Indian landscape tells a part of the same story. The frog and the lotus share one element, water, yet their lives unfold in opposite directions. The frog rises from water to air, the lotus rises from mud to sunlight. One sings, one blooms. Both mark the rhythm of life. Both remind us that beauty and wisdom can grow from depths unseen. It is said that the frog keeps the lotus awake, and the lotus keeps the frog alive, a balance between movement and stillness, between sound and silence. When the first rains come, the ponds that lay cracked and silent suddenly awaken. The air smells of earth and renewal. Within days, frogs emerge from their sleep, and lotus buds rise from the mud. They appear together, heralds of fertility and life. The lotus unfolds slowly, petal by petal, lifting its delicate form above the murky water. The frog perches near its stem, its green skin glistening, its eyes half closed. To watch them side by side is to see two kinds of awakening: the awakening of sound and the awakening of light. The ancients believed this pairing was no accident. They called it the marriage of Bhumi, earth, and Jala, water, the living union that makes creation possible. In Hindu cosmology, the lotus holds a sacred place. It is the throne of gods and goddesses, the seat of Brahma, the abode of Lakshmi. Its root lies in mud, its stem in water, its blossom in light, a map of existence itself. The frog, born from the same pond, mirrors that journey in movement rather than form. Where the lotus ascends through stillness, the frog ascends through sound. Both rise from obscurity toward illumination, each in its own rhythm. Thus, when poets wrote of the dawn, they often described the scene in these words: the lotus opens her eyes, the frogs lift their voices, the sun listens, and the world is reborn. The lotus teaches a paradox. It grows in mud, yet remains untouched by it. Its petals shed water, its color stays bright. It proves that purity is not found by avoiding the world, but by existing within it, without corruption. The frog, too, embodies this lesson, a creature of mud and rain, yet never shamed by its element. Its green skin shines clean in the sunlight. It moves between darkness and brightness with ease, untroubled by either. To the ancient mind, this was purity through acceptance, not denial. A life lived in harmony with what is, rather than struggle against what should be. Every pond has a pulse. When the frogs sing, it beats faster. When they sleep, the silence thickens. The lotus blooms respond subtly, closing during storm, opening when calm returns. This dance between voice and flower, vibration and stillness, was seen as a form of sacred conversation. The Vedic poets compared it to the dialogue between the body and the soul. The frog, restless and expressive, was the body, moving, breathing, longing. The lotus, still and radiant, was the soul, watching, unfolding, receiving. Together they formed a living meditation, sound as prayer, silence as grace. In the imagery of Hindu art, goddess Lakshmi, bringer of prosperity, is often depicted seated upon a blooming lotus. But near her feet, artists sometimes carved small frogs, easily overlooked unless one looks closely. These frogs are her companions, not her servants. They represent the fertile, ever-renewing spirit of the earth, the reminder that abundance must flow like water, not stagnate. In folk tradition, when the rains come and the lotus ponds bloom, villagers offer flowers and grains at the water's edge, whispering, "Lakshmi, awaken with your frogs. Fill our homes with rain and laughter." Thus, the goddess of wealth and the humble frog share a bond. One symbolizes manifest beauty. The other, the voice that calls it forth. Where there is life, there is desire. And both the lotus and frog embody it in pure form. The lotus opens to the sun each morning in silent yearning. The frog calls for its mate in the dark with unashamed song. One's desire is light, the other's is sound. Both are prayers disguised as instinct. To the mystic poets, this was the essence of creation, the divine yearning to express itself, to multiply, to be heard, to be seen. In the Bhagavata Purana, Krishna says, "All longing is my play. Through every call and every bloom, I sing myself into being." Thus, the frog's cry and the lotus's bloom are not opposites. They are two expressions of the same cosmic desire to exist. In Buddhist philosophy, the lotus symbolizes enlightenment, the awakening of consciousness rising from the murk of illusion. The frog, leaping from water to land, mirrors that same motion, a small, physical symbol of liberation. Some early Buddhist art even shows frogs near the Buddha's feet, as if to remind the viewer that awakening begins not in heaven, but in the mud of daily existence. The frog's call after rain was heard as the sound of Dharma spreading through the world, the first vibration of awareness stirring in the minds of all beings. Thus, both frog and lotus became teachers of awakening, one through stillness, one through sound. In metaphysical texts, water is the element of emotion and memory, while light is the element of awareness. The frog unites with water, the lotus reaches for light. Together they describe the alchemy of transformation, feeling purified by understanding, instinct lifted by consciousness. The yogis called this sattva, the state of balance and clarity where emotion and wisdom coexist. To meditate by a lotus pond was to experience this balance visibly. Water below, light above, frogs chanting between. Each sound was a reminder that all change begins in vibration, a ripple that grows into movement, and movement into awakening. When night falls and the pond becomes still, the stars appear in the water. The lotus closes its petals, and the frogs grow quiet. In that reflection, moon above, moon below, one sees the truth of unity, the world mirrored within itself. In some philosophical schools, this reflection is called Maya, illusion. In others, it is Leela, divine play. Either way, the frog and the lotus remain, symbols that teach us to see beauty in both reflection and reality. The frog, whose body touches both surface and depth, teaches that we can exist in both worlds, the world of form and the world of meaning, without losing our essence. In the human body, the heart chakra is called anahata, meaning the unstruck sound. It is symbolized by a lotus of 12 petals. Its vibration is subtle, continuous, a sound that exists without being made. The frog's croak was thought to echo this inner sound. Rough on the outside, but resonant with the pulse of life. In meditation, practitioners would sit by lotus ponds, listening to frogs and imagining that the sound came from within their own chest. In this way, the outer pond became the mirror of the inner pond, and the sound of the frog, the teacher of the heart. At dawn, when the first rays of sunlight fall upon the pond, A small breeze ripples across the surface. Lotus flowers turn their faces toward the east, and frogs leap from leaf to leaf, scattering drops like tiny stars. This movement, gentle, rhythmic, endless, is the dance of creation itself. The Hindu scriptures call it Rita, cosmic order. It is the law that governs the tides, the seasons, and even the heartbeat. The frog and the lotus, each in their way, embody this order, responding precisely to temperature, light, and time. They move when the universe moves. The sages taught, to live in Rita is to live without resistance, to flow with the rhythm that already exists. In later centuries, commentators on the Manduka Upanishad, such as the philosopher Gaudapada, expanded the image of the frog. He wrote that the self, though appearing to move through different states, is in truth unmoving. Like a frog resting in a pond, its reflection changing with each ripple, while its body remains still. Thus, the changes we call waking or sleeping are not of the self, but of the surface, waves upon still water. When one recognizes this, one attains Advaita, non-duality, the knowing that there is no separation between observer and observed, between the frog and the pond, between consciousness and the world it perceives. Every sound in nature points towards silence. The croak of the frog begins, peaks, fades, and what remains is the still air. So too, every experience in life, joy, sorrow, fear, hope, arises, resonates, and dissolves. To cling to the sound is suffering. To rest in the silence that follows is wisdom. The frog, by its rhythm, teaches this truth. Its call is not constant. It gives space between notes. In those pauses lies peace, the unspoken Turiya, the soundless presence beneath the song of the world. When the rain stops and the ponds grow quiet, that silence is not emptiness. It is fullness unexpressed. The same silence that holds galaxies, rivers, and thought. In the Indian tradition, the mind is a lake, and thoughts are ripples. When the surface is disturbed, reflection blurs. When it is calm, it mirrors perfectly. The frog, resting upon that surface, is awareness. Small, still, aware of each ripple yet not bound by it. It knows that water will move, wind will pass, but its essence remains untouched. The yogis use this image to explain meditation. Sit like a frog, still, watchful, balanced on the edge of the infinite. Do not fight the ripples, simply see them. The seeing itself brings calm. When the reflection becomes clear, one realizes that the pond was never separate from the sky it mirrors. The Upanishads speak of anahata nada, the unstruck sound, a vibration heard not with ears, but with the soul. The frog's croak, they said, was the outer reflection of that inner vibration. Both arise from life's pulse, both express the continuity of existence. By meditating on this natural sound, one could align the heartbeat with the heartbeat of the universe. Thus, the Manduka became a guide to inner listening. When the frog sings after rain, it is as though the world itself hums the syllable Om in its own language. Those who listen without judgment can hear that every sound, even the rough, imperfect, earthly, is a doorway to transcendence. To the philosophers of ancient India, the universe was a circle of vibration, sound becoming matter, matter becoming silence, silence birthing sound again. The frog, with its cycle of silence and song, embodied this eternal return. Its life mirrors cosmic rhythm. Silence during the dry season, song during the monsoon, silence again when the water recedes. The same cycle governs creation itself, manifestation, maintenance, dissolution. And so the frog's simple existence became an echo of Brahma the Creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the dissolver. It was not mythic exaggeration, but recognition. Nature repeats divinity in every pulse. There is a story told in the hills of Karnataka. A young seeker came to Manduka Rishi, asking how to find God. The sage smiled, pointed to the pond, and said, "Listen." For days the student sat by the water, hearing only frogs and wind. At last, he returned, disappointed. "I heard nothing divine," he said. Manduka closed his eyes. "Then listen again until the frogs and wind are no longer outside you." The student returned. After many days, something shifted. He heard the frogs and wind not as separate, but as his own breath, his own pulse. When he came back, he bowed deeply. "I understand," he whispered. "There is no inside or outside." And Manduka only nodded, for that was the entire teaching of the Upanishads. The Mandukya Upanishad ends where it begins. In sound, it says, "Aum is all this. This self is Aum. This is the highest." The frog's humble croak is not Aum, but it is born of the same source, vibration meeting breath, desire meeting expression. The sages saw no separation between sacred and natural. Both were expressions of the same living current. Thus, Manduka the frog, Manduka the sage, and Mandukya the scripture became one chain of meaning. Symbols of the awakening that begins not in temples, but in the quiet, listening to life itself. Long before temples were carved and scriptures written, the sages of the Vedic world sat beside ponds and rivers, listening to the rhythms of frogs and wind. They believed that sound was not merely a thing heard, but a living current that flowed through all existence, a current that connected the visible and the invisible. Among those sages was one known as Manduka Rishi, the frog sage. He is said to have lived by a quiet lake, teaching through silence, his speech slow and rhythmic like rainfall. It is from him, or from the symbol he embodied, that one of the greatest of all Upanishads takes its name, the Mandukya. This Upanishad, only 12 verses long, contains a universe, the secret of sound, sleep, dream, and awakening. And at its heart lies a single syllable, Aum. Imagine the surface of a pond at dusk. Still, reflective, yet alive with unseen motion beneath. This, say the Upanishads, is consciousness. It has depths, layers, and waves. When the frog sits quietly upon the surface, it seems to float between two worlds. The air above, the water below. So too the human mind rests between waking and dreaming, between awareness and mystery. The sages use the frog as metaphor for the self that moves between states, never fully belonging to one, yet essential to all. In the same way that the frog breathes both air and water, the soul breathes both matter and spirit. One invisible, one seen, the Mandukya. Upanishad teaches that life unfolds in 4 stages of consciousness: waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and the 4th, beyond all 3, Turiya. Each stage is not a place, but a mode of awareness. Waking is outward, our daily seeing, doing, naming. Dreaming is inward, the imagination that creates worlds from memory and desire. Deep sleep is the stillness where individuality dissolves, yet potential remains. The 4th, Turiya, is pure consciousness, not asleep, not awake, but silent, limitless being. The Upanishad says that Aum contains all these. The sound A corresponds to waking, U to dreaming, M to deep sleep, and the silence after, to Turiya, the essence that holds them all. The frog, poised between water and air, symbolizes this 4th state, that quiet awareness which transcends all conditions. To meditate, said the frog sage, is to wait, to stay perfectly still until the moment of movement arises by itself. The leap of a frog is not forced. It is born of readiness. The same is true of enlightenment. No one can rush it. When the mind becomes calm enough, it leaps naturally from the surface of illusion into the deep water of truth. In that leap, the old self is left behind, not destroyed, but transformed. Like ripples spreading outward, the awareness of one awakening touches everything around it. The frog's leap thus became the ancient image of spiritual transition, the movement from limited perception to boundless presence. In the stories of the early forest dwellers, Manduka Rishi taught that to find the divine, one must listen deeply, not to the words of others, but to the vibration of one's own being. He said, "Close your eyes and hear the echo beneath your breath." That is the voice of the world, remembering itself. His students would sit by the pond at twilight, chanting Aum softly, listening to the frogs answer from the reeds. The sound of the frogs was not a disturbance. It was part of the meditation. As the chant and the croak merged, the students learned the essence of the teaching. All distinctions are temporary. The sacred and the ordinary are one vibration seen from different distances. When the chant ended, the silence that followed was called Manduka, the awareness that remains when sound fades. Every monsoon, the heavens open and the earth exhales. But the ancients said there is another monsoon, quieter, slower, deeper, that pours not from the sky, but from within. They called it the Antar Varsha, the inner rain. It falls not on soil, but on the heart. It floods not rivers, but thoughts. The outer rain feeds the crops. The inner rain feeds awareness. When both come together, sky and soul, water and wisdom, the world feels whole again. And it is the frog, Manduka, that teaches this most gently. For it is both born of rain and awakened by it. Its song is not a cry for water, but the celebration of renewal. The sages listened to that rhythm and found in it a mirror of the spirit's own awakening. Sometimes, long before any real storm, a kind of drought arrives inside us. We may not see it at first. It begins with silence, not peaceful silence, but the dry stillness of exhaustion. The mind becomes a cracked riverbed. The thoughts that once flowed easily turn brittle. Even prayer sounds hollow. The Upanishads call this the season of thirst, the stage when the soul forgets its own source. It is not sin or failure. It is simply distance, a pause in the great rhythm. When the world outside burns with heat, the frogs sleep beneath the ground, waiting for the sound of thunder. So too does the spirit rest, hidden beneath layers of dust, waiting for the vibration that will remind it to sing again. That vibration, the sages said, is not given by gods or teachers. It is remembered from within. No storm begins with thunder. It begins with one drop. A sound so soft it almost passes unnoticed. A breath, a moment of honesty, a single realization that perhaps the dryness is not permanent. In meditation, that first drop often comes as a tear, not of sadness, but of recognition. It is the sign that something inside has started to move again. The tear is the body's rain, the release of what was stored too long. The frog, when awakened by the first rain, does not question the source. It simply answers. Its voice rises because it knows the rhythm instinctively. The human heart, too, remembers. The moment we stop trying to control the storm, the drops begin to fall. As the inner rain builds, memories stir. Some sweet, some sharp, some buried so deep they seem to belong to another life. In the philosophy of yoga, these are called samskaras, the impressions left on the mind by past actions, words, and emotions. They are like clouds. invisible until the sun disappears behind them. The frog's croaking, loud and unrefined, echoes the same process, the release of what has been held too long. Each sound it makes clears a space in the air. So too, each memory brought to light clears a space in the heart. This stage of inner rain can feel chaotic, just as storms often do. But chaos is part of cleansing. Without it, nothing truly renews. When the rains arrive fully, the land does not resist. It yields, it floods, it reshapes. The soil loosens. The roots breathe again. In meditation, there comes a similar moment when tears, sensations, and half-forgotten feelings rush forth together. It can be overwhelming, but it is not destruction. It is release. The scriptures call this pralaya, the dissolution, not the end of the world, but the washing away of what is no longer needed. The seeker must let the flood happen, trusting that the same force which breaks will also renew. The frog does not fear the flood. It thrives in it. It leaps into water as though returning home. And so must the spirit, unafraid of its own depth. When the water reaches its height, the frogs begin their chorus. Each call is the same, yet none are identical. They fill the air with a rhythm that seems endless, tireless, devoted. To the listener, it is simply noise. To the wise, it is surrender. 1,000 small voices praising existence just for being. In the same way, when the heart is full of inner rain, speech becomes prayer, even when no words are spoken. Every exhale becomes gratitude, every silence becomes song. The body, once heavy with dryness, becomes light again, like a leaf floating on floodwater. This is the stage the mystics called bhava, the swelling of the heart that overflows into compassion for all life. All rain must end. After days of sound, there comes a morning when the sky clears and the world gleams with freshness. The ponds lie full and quiet. The frogs rest. The air is clean. This stillness is not the old silence of drought. It is the silence after fulfillment, the pause that follows a complete breath. In meditation, this is called santosha, contentment. Nothing extraordinary happens here, only peace. But this peace is not absence. It is presence without movement. When one reaches this stage, even the smallest sound, a bird's wing, a drop falling, feels divine. The inner rain has washed the world, and everything reflects light again. Look into a pond after a storm. The surface trembles with small ripples, but beneath lies clarity. You see your reflection, no longer distorted, no longer dry-eyed. The rain has made the mirror whole again. The Manduka Upanishad says that the self cannot be seen directly. It can only be reflected in a still mind. Thus, the purpose of the inner monsoon is reflection, to cleanse until awareness becomes transparent enough to mirror truth. The frog, sitting motionless upon that water, becomes an emblem of the soul itself, awake, cleansed, unafraid to see its own image beneath. After the monsoon, the world smells different. The earth exhales a deep, sweet scent called petrichor, the perfume of soil meeting rain. In the same way, the mind, after cleansing, carries a new fragrance, the subtle calm of forgiveness. Forgiveness of oneself, of the past, of the world, for not being perfect. It is the fragrance of acceptance, soft, invisible, yet unmistakable. In this fragrance, the frog begins its quiet lullabies, and the lotus blooms wider than before. The seeker, too, finds that meditation becomes effortless. What was once a struggle now feels natural, like breathing or listening to distant thunder. Even when the surface dries again, water remains underground. The monsoon may pass, but its memory stays in the roots. So it is with the inner rain. Once the heart has been washed, it never forgets the taste of freshness. In the scriptures, this enduring presence is called anubhava, realization that cannot be unlearned. It is not constant ecstasy. It is quiet knowing. The frog may fall silent, but it does not forget the rain. Every time the seeker breathes, every time a kind act is done, the hidden water moves again, feeding unseen roots. This is the beginning of wisdom, not the loud awakening, but the gentle maintenance of life thereafter. The sages of the monsoon lands designed their meditation practices to mirror the rhythm of rain, heat, and waiting, the buildup of longing. The first drop, recognition of truth. The flood, emotional release. The calm, integration. Even their chants followed the sound of rain, long syllables falling, short ones rebounding like drops on stone. They believed that to meditate was to become the season, to feel water running through one's breath, to let sound become cleansing, to let thought dissolve into rhythm. In that rhythm, the soul rediscovers its natural climate, gentle, moist, fertile with insight. When the inner rain completes its work, something subtle changes. The boundaries of self grow soft. The seeker begins to feel not only their own renewal, but the world's. This is compassion, karuna, the realization that every creature, even a frog, participates in the same monsoon of existence. To see a frog leaping joyfully after rain and to feel joy yourself. This is enlightenment in its simplest form. No golden light, no thunder of revelation, just the quiet understanding that life, in every form, is sacred. The rain has not only cleansed the heart, it has opened it. The rains have ended. The clouds have scattered into thin silver ribbons that drift across a deep, endless sky. Below, the ponds that once roared with frogs and wind now lie still. Quiet mirrors where the moon lingers like a soft thought that refuses to fade. In that silence, the ancient sages said, Manduka listens. For the frog is not only the voice of rain, it is also the guardian of the silence that follows. Its patience, its stillness, its ability to vanish beneath the water and wait without fear, made it a symbol of the meditative mind. Calm, alert, reflecting heaven. The rains were speech. This stillness is understanding. After the flood comes stillness. The air feels lighter, as if the earth itself has exhaled. The scent of wet soil fades slowly, replaced by the faint sweetness of jasmine and lotus. The moon rises, pale, calm, knowing. Its light is not the sun's fierce truth, but a softer wisdom, reflective rather than revealing. The frog's world belongs now to this light. Water, gleaming like glass, leaves silvered, every sound magnified in the hush. The sages called this time Chandrakala, the lunar hour, when the soul turns inward to see its reflection in the calm pond of the mind. They said that the moon and the frog share one heart, both born of water, both silent watchers of transformation. Water, when disturbed, cannot reflect. Only in stillness does it become a mirror. In the same way, the mind must grow quiet before it can see truth. The frog teaches this with its posture. It does not force silence. It simply rests, breathing slowly, blending into its surroundings. Its stillness is not empty. It is full of awareness. This is the yogic silence, the kind that listens. It is the silence after understanding, not before it. The silence that follows the last word of a mantra, when meaning has dissolved and only presence remains. When the frog stops singing, the entire pond seems to breathe in harmony with its rest. The universe, for a moment, feels whole. In Indian poetry, the moon is called Sakshi, the witness. It sees all, judges nothing. Its light touches everything equally, palace and hut, river and gutter, lotus and mud. The frog, resting on the moonlit pond, becomes a smaller mirror of this same witness, aware of its world, untouched by it. The sages saw in this image the perfect symbol of detachment, to reflect life without absorbing its turmoil. As the moon reflects the sun's fire without burning, the awakened mind reflects the world without suffering. The frog, half in water and half in light, reminds us that such balance is possible. There is a moment just before midnight when the moon is directly above and its reflection falls perfectly upon the center of the pond. The two circles, moon above, moon below, seem connected by a thread of light that passes through the water's surface. The philosophers of the Manduka saw in this vision the bridge between realms, the pathway between the waking and the eternal, between the soul and its source. They said that meditation was like standing upon that thread, neither fully in the world nor outside it, neither in motion nor in sleep. The frog, poised upon the water, embodies this moment, a being that does not fall into the depth nor leap away from reflection, but rests upon it, trusting the invisible line that joins the finite and infinite. Centuries later, when Buddhism spread through the forests and mountains of India, the image of the frog appeared quietly in the meditative imagination. The Buddha himself was said to have sat through storms and moonlit nights, unmoving, eyes half closed, as patient and grounded as a frog in the rain. In early Buddhist texts, frogs were sometimes mentioned in parables about mindfulness. Creatures that live simply, close to the elements, dependent on rhythm rather than desire. Monks, meditating beside ponds, began to see the frogs as companions of stillness. Their croaks, once distractions, became metronomes of breathing. Their sudden leaps reminded meditators that insight comes not from struggle, but from readiness. And when they fell silent, it was said the Buddha smiled. For the world, even without words, had joined him in contemplation. Sound and silence are not opposites. They are phases of the same vibration. The frog understands this better than we do. Its song fills the night, but when it ends, the air hums with a residue of resonance, a silence that still trembles. This trembling silence, the yogis said, is nada, the subtle hum of the universe that continues when all things have ceased speaking. It is the same sound that exists inside the human body after the last breath of a chant. In that silence, there is fullness. It is not the emptiness of absence, but the fullness of completion. Like the still pond after rain, like the moon after storm. The frog sits there, surrounded by this soundless music, and the seeker who sits nearby feels it too. The quiet rhythm of the cosmos vibrating through stillness. The ancient texts often compared the mind to the moon. Both borrow their light. The moon reflects the sun. The mind reflects consciousness. When the water of thought is disturbed, the reflection breaks. When it is calm, awareness shines clearly. The frog, sitting in this light, becomes the symbol of the mind restored, a consciousness washed clean by the inner monsoon. Its skin glistens with dew, its eyes shimmer with reflection. It has no need to speak now. Everything that was meant to be sung has been sung. This is not ignorance. It is wisdom perfected into peace. In many traditions, silence is not the absence of teaching. It is the highest form of it. When words have reached their limit, silence completes what they cannot express. The frog's final silence after the rains is this teaching. It says nothing, yet everything in the pond seems to listen. The wind slows, the reeds bow, the stars appear brighter. The sages used to say, when Manduka grows silent, the gods rest their tongues. For the divine too, they believed, finds rest in quietude, when creation pauses to admire itself. In yoga, the left nostril is called Chandra Nadi, the moon channel. It governs coolness, intuition, calm, the breath of peace. Practitioners seeking tranquility would meditate under moonlight, inhaling through this channel, imagining the breath as silver water filling a hidden pond within the chest. Sometimes, the sound of frogs nearby was said to deepen the practice. Their calls rose and fell like the rhythm of the breath itself. And when they ceased, the practitioner knew they had entered Manduka's silence, the place beyond sound, where only breath remains. In this stillness, the mind reflects the moon perfectly, round, luminous, unbroken. The Upanishads say that God too looks upon creation as upon a reflection, not as something separate, but as himself mirrored in water. The frog, motionless beneath that reflection, becomes the observer and the observed. In its golden eyes, the moon shines twice, once above, once within. This image became sacred to poets. That divinity is the act of witnessing. The world does not need saving, it needs seeing. The quiet seeing that accepts everything without judgment, as the moon accepts clouds, frogs, ripples, and reeds. When all the frogs are silent and only one remains, its solitary voice feels more vast than 1,000 choruses. So too, when the world grows still and only the inner consciousness hums, its presence fills every space. This is the lesson of Manduka's silence. To understand that listening is the final act of devotion. When there is nothing more to say, one must simply hear. The wind, the heartbeat, the invisible monsoon still falling within. The frog, small as it is, becomes the eternal listener, the embodiment of humility before the endless sound of being. The story of Manduka, the frog of myth, of rain, of silence, has always been circular. It begins in water and ends in water. It rises with the monsoon, falls quiet beneath the moon, and waits in stillness for the next song of thunder. In its small, humble life, the sages saw the reflection of the cosmos, the same rhythm that turns galaxies, births stars, and folds them again into night. Nothing is wasted, nothing truly ends. Each silence contains the memory of sound, and each sound is born from silence. Manduka is this rhythm, the voice of the world remembering itself. The Vedas speak of creation as breath, the exhalation of Brahman bringing the worlds into being, the inhalation drawing them back into stillness. Between each breath lies the pause, the space where potential rests, unformed yet full. The frog too lives by this breath. It inflates and deflates, croaks and falls silent, appears and vanishes with the seasons. Its life, like the universe, is a breathing cycle. Expansion, contraction, renewal. To watch a frog breathe on a moonlit pond is to glimpse the pulse of creation itself. A small, rhythmic proof that existence never truly ceases. It only changes tempo. When the clouds form in the heat of the sun, they carry the vapor of rivers, ponds, and breath. They travel far, unseen, until they burst into rain. The rain feeds the earth gives birth to frogs, the frogs sing to the clouds. And so the circle continues. This cycle, simple and eternal, was sacred to the ancients. It taught that life sustains itself through reciprocity. The sky needs the song of the earth, just as the earth needs the water of the sky. The frog became the bridge between them, the living hymn that kept heaven and soil in conversation. Each croak was a small, honest offering to the rhythm of life itself. And in that offering lies the first law of the cosmos. What gives, receives. What listens, speaks. From the very first myth of Beki, the frog who loved the sun, the story has always been about balance. Water desired fire. The finite desired the eternal. When she saw the sun directly, she vanished into the pond, not as punishment, but as transformation. For how could water hold the sun's light without becoming vapor? How could the soul see divinity without merging into it? Thus, Beki's disappearance is not loss, it is return. It is the soul rising as mist to join its source, only to fall again as rain, to nourish the living. The sages said this is the secret of samsara, that even dissolution is participation in the eternal rhythm. The sun calls, the water rises, and life begins anew. To the mystic, heaven was never far above. It was mirrored below. The pond was not a piece of nature. It was a miniature cosmos. The lotus was the sun. The frog was the voice of earth. The ripples were time. The reflections were souls. When one looked deeply into that water, one could see everything: birth, growth, decay, silence, and light, all existing together without conflict. This was the lesson of the frog's pond. That harmony is not stillness without movement, but movement so perfect it appears still. The frogs leap, the rains fall, the suns shine, all are acts within the same seamless dance. In every age, humans have seen themselves reflected in the frog's story. We too wait through dry seasons. We too leap from shadow to light. We too sing when the rains return. Our prayers, like the frog's song, rise from need but become gratitude. We call out for life, and in calling, we discover that life was listening all along. When we fall silent again, the echo of that song remains in the heart. The reminder that we are not apart from nature, but a note within its hymn. Manduka teaches us the courage to be small, to find holiness in breathing, in rhythm, in waiting, to trust that what sleeps will wake, and what dies will return in another form. At night, when all else is quiet, the faint croak of a distant frog can still be heard, not as noise, but as pulse. It is the voice of time continuing, the whisper that the cycle is unbroken. To the seeker, that voice is more than sound. It is the echo of creation itself, a reminder that silence is never empty. Even in the stillest moment, life hums softly beneath the surface. This is the Nada Brahma, the truth that the universe is made of sound, and that even the quietest breath participates in that eternal vibration. The frog, by its humble rhythm, keeps that truth alive. Dawn comes. The long night of rain and reflection fades into light. Mist lifts from the ponds, and for the first time, the sun touches the water without anger. It is gentle now, golden, patient, reflected perfectly in the still surface. From somewhere in the reeds, Manduka stirs. It does not sing yet. It blinks slowly at the light, as if recognizing an old friend. The cycle begins again. Fire and water, sound and silence, heaven and earth remembering one another. The frog leaps once, and the ripples carry sunlight across the pond, like threads of gold. In Manduka's tale, each element finds its teaching. Water shows compassion, always taking the shape of what it touches. Fire shows transformation, changing all things, yet desiring nothing. Earth shows patience, holding life through storm and drought alike. Air shows surrender, invisible yet essential, connecting all movement. And sound, the fifth element, shows remembrance, the eternal vibration linking all others together. The frog is where they meet, an animal of water, breathing air, singing fire into sound, resting upon earth, beneath open sky. To live as Manduka lives is to live in balance, not seeking to master the elements, but to dwell peacefully among them. Imagine, once more, the ancient temple at night. The stone steps glisten with the memory of rain. The lamps burn low. A few frogs linger in the sacred tank, their reflections shimmering beneath the moonlight. The priests have finished their chants. The bells have gone quiet. Yet the air still vibrates, as if the stones themselves are remembering the sound of prayer. In that moment, everything is temple. The pond, the sky, the frogs, the listeners. The sacred is not contained by walls or scripture. It breathes in the rhythm of rain and the stillness that follows. Manduka, though small, has always been that reminder. That divinity does not reside above, but within the quiet pulse of life itself. In Hindu mythology, the gods are many, but the act of listening is one. It is said that all divine ears open when sincerity speaks, whether through mantra or the croak of a frog or the sigh of a tired soul. Manduka's final teaching is this: to listen, not to control, to witness, not to command, to join, not to conquer. When the world is dry, sing. When it rains, listen. When silence falls, be still. This is enough. This is wisdom. The moon fades into pale morning light. The pond returns to its gentle routine. A dragonfly hovers, a petal drifts, the last ripples dissolve. If you look closely, you might see it. Beneath the surface, Manduka rests, not gone, not forgotten, only waiting. In a few months, when the thunder rolls again, it will rise, breathe, and sing the first note of the next cycle. And so, life continues, without haste, without end, like an infinite mantra murmured beneath creation. Sound, silence, and return. Now the story closes, though its echo remains. You have walked through rain and silence, through the songs of frogs and the meditations of sages. You have seen Manduka not merely as an animal, but as a teacher of balance, of patience, of renewal. The frog, the lotus, the rain, the moon, the sun, all have spoken, each in their own voice, and all have said the same thing: that life is rhythm, that sound and silence are not enemies, but lovers, that what disappears will return, and what falls will rise again. Listen. Even now, the faintest vibration continues, the heartbeat of the universe murmuring below all thought. It is Manduka's voice, and it will sing again when you are ready to hear.